Hi guys, and welcome to the next video from Formula Fangirl. That's me. So today we're going to be talking about Formula E. So right now Formula 1 is having a nice little snooze and a winter break, and in its place we're watching Formula E, and it was a very exciting race. It was my first time watching Formula E and I thought it was really good. So we're going to be talking about all things Formula E today. So the full name from Formula E is the ABB FIA Formula E Championship, and it is in 12 cities in 5 continents. It's a fully electric motorsport, hence the name Formula E, and we have 11 teams and 22 drivers, and we'll be getting onto them later on. The car is called a Gen 2 car, which means that all cars have the same chassis. They have one set of all-weather tyres, and this season they get to go up to 250 kilowatts of power on their battery, which is a lot. A max speed of 175 miles per hour, and they definitely showed their skills on the track. Let's run down what a normal race day weekend is like. So, on a Friday, we have a shakedown. Now, a shakedown normally happens on a Friday, and if the street circuit that they run on, because E-Prix run on street circuits, if the street is available, they will use it for a shakedown on the Friday. This is where cars can test the reliability and what's going on with their electrical systems, but it's just a little bit of a practice, and they only get to run up to 110 kilowatts of power on that shakedown. So it's just to get a feel of everything. That happens on the day before. Then on the Saturday, much like the Formula 1, we have practice, qualifying and the race. So practice is a 45-minute session followed by a 30-minute session, and this is to see, obviously it is timed, but again it's just a practice, and this is where they can test a feel for the track, the setup of the car properly, but if there is a double header, which I will explain later, on the double header second day it only runs for 45 minutes, so they get that much practice. Obviously, qualifying is where we get to have the order of the drivers, and that is where we find out who's going to start where on the grid. And in normal circumstances, it lasts for 1 hour, divided into 4 groups of up to 6 cars, and this will be defined by their championship place. So wherever they finish in the race before is where they will start in qualifying to see where they can finish for the next one. And of the first race of the season, which happened yesterday, it's determined by the previous championship. So people like Jean-Eric Vergne, who was the championship leader, he got to start out first, and people like Stoffel Vandoorne, who it's his first Formula E season, would start in the later group. So that is how things work. And then after the qualifying, we have a Super Pole shootout, and that is where the top 6 drivers get to have a little bit of a battle with each other for the Julius Bahr pole position, and that means they get 3 extra points for the race, and they get to go out one by one to see which laps they can complete to see who gets that top spot. So there you have it. That is the race day rundown of all what happens either on the Friday or the Saturday of the race. So much unlike Formula 1, where we see things happening from Thursday to Sunday, Formula E normally goes from sometimes on a Friday, but mainly all the action happens on a Saturday. As I said, E-Prix happen on city streets, and the E-Prix lasts for 45 minutes and 1 lap. So when the leader of the race passes the line at that 45-minute point, they all then have to do 1 more lap to see if they can get that extra boost of power to finish the lap in first, second or third. So that is how the E-Prix works. So now I think it's important to give us a rundown of all the teams and the drivers that we're going to see throughout this season of Formula E. I'd never known some of the drivers before. I was familiar with a couple of them due to the fact that they were ex-Formula 1 drivers, but everyone else was completely new to me. So, let's run down the list. Okay, so first we have Audi Sport ABT Schaefer, and that is Daniel Abt in car number 66 and Lucas di Grassi in car number 11. Next we have the BMW I Andretti Motorsport. We have Antonio Felix da Costa in car number 28 and Alexander Sims in car number 27. We have the DS Techeetah Formula E team, and that is with Andre Lotterer in car number 36, and then reigning champion Jean-Eric Vergne in car number 25. We then have Envision Virgin Racing with Sam Bird in number 2 and Robin Frins in number 4. Next we have Geox Dragon team, and that is with Jose Maria Lopez in car number 7 and Maximilian Gunther in car number 6. We then have HWA Race Lab with Stoffel Vandoorne in car number 5 and Gary Parfait in car number 17. We have Mahindra Racing with Jerome D'Ambrosio in car number 64 and Felix Rosenqvist in car number 94. We then have Neo Formula E team with Tom Dillman in car number 8 and Oliver Turvey in car number 16. We then have Nissan E-Dams with Sebastian Buemi in car number 23 and Oliver Rowland in car number 22. We then have Panasonic Jaguar Racing with Nelson Piquet Jr. in car number 3 and Mitch Evans in car number 20. We then have Venturi Formula E team with Felipe Massa in car number 19 and Eduardo Mortara in car number 48. So there you have it. There are our 11 teams and our 22 drivers. There will be some driver changes as we move on to 2019, but we will get onto that as the season progresses. Moving on to yesterday's race, and it happened in Saudi Arabia in Ad Diriyah, and it was a very up in the air day, shall we say, because let's face it, Saudi Arabia is in the desert, and I think they were saying that in Saudi Arabia it rains maybe 3 days of the year. And when did it rain? Yesterday, the day of the Formula E. They've never raced in these conditions before in all the seasons of Formula E. And as you can tell from my video when I talked about predictions for Formula 1, rain is something that can cause quite a stir, as I said in that video. I couldn't believe it when I heard that there was rain in the desert, and all the drivers seemed rather frazzled by this news, shall we say, because things didn't go according to plan. As I said about practice and qualifying and how they run down, things got changed heavily for this first race. So the first session of free practice was cancelled. The Superpole shootout was also cancelled because there wasn't enough time to try and get things done with these conditions, because they had to make sure that things were safe for the drivers and things were happening all right on the track. Moving on to what happened in free practice, let's run down all that happened. So Eduardo Mortara was involved in a crash, unfortunately. He went into the barriers and had to retire from the free practice for the rest of the time, which was very disappointing for him. Jean-Eric Vergne was going out on the track. Now, of course, he's the reigning champion, so he knows what conditions on the track should be like. But he was trying to find as much grip as he could, and he did a big slide over the racing line, which almost saw him hit his back wheels into the barrier. But luckily, Jean managed to keep it out of the barrier, which is very good to see. Felix Rosenqvist had a big lock-up due to the puddles that were on the track and had a big slide and had to really turn his car as fast as he could to try and make sure that he also didn't land himself into the barrier. Mitch Evans was almost in the wall at turn 1. We saw him going very slowly. He managed to slow it down just so that he tapped the barrier rather than give it full force. Going back to Felix Rosenqvist, who managed to keep it out the wall the first time, didn't manage to keep it out the wall the second time. Again, on turn 1, he was unable to stop the car and slow it down, and he got nose damage because of it, which was very unfortunate for Felix, seeing as it was half an hour to go until qualifying and they had to try and fix the front of his car. When Felix bashed into the barriers, Felipe Massa was right behind him, so Felipe kind of got a little bit spooked with the fact that Felix got into the barrier, and Felipe was almost there himself, but luckily he managed to slow down and keep it out of the wall. And the big surprise from free practice is that newcomer Stoffel Vandoorne was fastest in free practice. He did it in 1 minute 18.868, which was a fantastic time for his debut practice in Formula E. So it was great to see Stoffel really put it out there, seeing as when he was in Formula 1, he was always at the back of the grid. So that was our free practice. Now, qualifying was also shaken up. Qualifying, as I said, should have been 4 groups of up to 6 cars, but time and the weather was not giving them any room. So qualifying was split into QA and QB. 11 people each in the qualifying to see what people could do and where they could finish. So qualifying A got off to a rocky start where Tom Dillman was sent out by the Neo team on the track, and he was doing multiple laps to see how fast he could get. We then later learned that this was illegal. He was not allowed to do this, and he became under investigation for not respecting the qualifying format. And unfortunately, due to the fact that they did that, Tom was then deemed to start at the back of the grid. So unfortunately for Tom, he got the wrong information and he had to start at the back. Nothing else really much happened in QA, apart from Antonio Felix da Costa taking provisional pole. So he had the agonising wait of qualifying B to see what was going to happen, to see if he was able to stay on pole. Qualifying B was a little bit more exciting, where we saw Gary Parfait have a big slide over a puddle. He was very, very close to having a big crash. These guys seem to be very good at keeping their cars out of the wall. But we did see a red flag, which means that Maximilian Günther's car just completely came to a halt. You saw it like a toy car. It literally ran out of power and he had to stop. He luckily stopped right by a place where they could retrieve the car safely, but it was on the track where cars were still coming behind him at high speed, so they had to red flag, and unfortunately Andre Lotterer was putting in a very good lap and he had to stop that straight away. But Stoffel Vandoorne, who was fastest in practice, only managed to take 5th, and Antonio Felix da Costa was able to keep his provisional pole. And then we moved on to the E-Prix, and it was extremely exciting. Despite only being 45 minutes, whereas we see Formula 1 races going on for certain hours, it was very exciting nonetheless. So let's talk about what happened in the race. So we had very many overtakes in the race. So right at the beginning, Antonio Felix da Costa managed to line himself up on the grid in a very wonky angle. He managed to get into his position and he then had to reverse and try and fix it, but he just couldn't get straight, like you're supposed to be straight in your box on the grid. So he started very wonky, and luckily I think he able to keep his place, but people got right behind him. So talking about some of the overtakes, I'm going to run down when they happened in the race. So one of the first really good overtakes we saw was Felipe Massa on Stoffel Vandoorne, and this happened at 30 minutes and 14 seconds remaining of the race. Stoffel was just trying to find his pace, but Felipe was creeping and creeping and creeping and managed to do a blinding overtake, which was very good for Felipe. Next, we had Jean-Eric Vergne on the pole sitter, Antonio Felix da Costa. And this happened at 26 minutes and 52 seconds remaining. That Jean wasn't going to stay behind for long. Once he had that first place in his sights, he was going to get it. So he stormed past Antonio and managed to take first. We later learned that there was going to be some penalties, but I will move on to that after we've given the run of overtakes. There was then a wonderful fight a little bit further down the line between Lopez, Buemi and D'Ambrosio. So Buemi was in front and Lopez tried to take him, and at the same time D'Ambrosio could see that while these guys were having a fight, he had the opportunity to get through himself. So while Lopez overtook Buemi, so did Ambrosio. So where Buemi then was the front of that pack, ended up at the end of that pack, and that happened at 17 minutes and 56 seconds remaining. We saw Andre Lotterer get ahead of Antonio Felix da Costa, which was very good for the guys in that team, and that happened at 16 minutes and 36 seconds remaining. Jean then was able to take Antonio Felix da Costa for a second time right towards the end of the race. So during that time there was some big things happening, which we will get on to. Jean was able to take Antonio Felix da Costa for a second time at 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Later on in the race, Mitch Evans did some wheel bashing to take 4th at 2 minutes and 21 seconds remaining. And very near towards the end, Andre Lotterer was going wheel to wheel with Buemi to try and take 5th position, and this literally happened with 1 minute remaining, but it was a very good move from Andre. And right at the end of the race, literally on the final last lap, Jean-Eric Vergne was second and Antonio Felix da Costa was first, and Jean was trying everything he could. He literally came this close to taking first right at the last minute, but it wasn't to be. Antonio Felix da Costa used a fan boost, which I will also explain, and he was able to go right past the line, and there you have it. He took first. So the 3 top finishes were Antonio Felix da Costa in first, Jean-Eric Vergne in second, and Jerome D'Ambrosio in third. They were the overtakes, and that was the final run of the race. We saw 3 DNFs in the race, with Rosenqvist and Parfait unfortunately putting their cars into the wall. And then we saw Lopez with a very wonky wheel, We're not too sure what happened to Lopez, but when you saw him, he had no damage to the side of his car, but his wheel was fully indented in the car at the front, and he had to retire from the race. And that caused a full course yellow flag, which means that the cars had to slow down to a certain speed and go past him while they got the tractor on the track to pull the car off in a safe position. Now, the reason that Jean-Eric Vergne had to try so hard and get past Antonio Felix da Costa multiple times is because, first, he got a penalty, along with many others. So, our penalties were Jean-Eric Vergne, Andre Lotterer, Felipe Massa and Alexander Sims, and Sims actually got 2 penalties in the race, and this was for technical infringement. I'm not too sure what this means myself, but I think it's because the cars didn't get a chance to run at full maximum in the practice and qualifying sessions. They used something that they shouldn't have within the race, and it caused a penalty. So unfortunately, while Jean-Eric Vergne got first, he then got a penalty, which means he had to drive through the pits, and it made him drop down the line, which saw him try and take Antonio Felix da Costa again in the race. With that safety car that we saw after Lopez's wheel dent, after the restart there was a huge grab for attack mode. So let me move on to what attack mode is. Attack mode is where cars drive over a certain activation point on the race and it gives them an extra boost of power. So there are 2 lines on the track, and it was at, I think, turn 17, just outside the exit of turn 17, where the cars can go off the racing line onto this attack mode, and it gave them an extra 25 kilowatts of power. Very crucial for certain overtakes. So that was very interesting to see when attack mode was unleashed. The drivers were allowed to go on attack mode twice over the race, and after the restart there was about 15 cars that decided to use the attack mode, which caused a very big heavy stir of traffic because all these people are trying to use attack mode at the same time. And on your screens, if you're watching the race, it would show you certain arrows, chevrons, to say how long attack mode is lasting, and it would go down, down, down to certain minutes of the race. Moving on to fan boost. So us as the fans can get well involved in the world of Formula E, and what you can do is go online to the Formula E website and vote for your favourite driver. So if there's a particular person that you think, oh, I really want to vote for him, I want to give him an extra boost, you can go online and do so. And what happens is the top 5 drivers who win the fan boost vote get an extra boost on the track, and they can decide when to use that. So in this race, the 5 drivers that won the fan boost were Stoffel Vandoorne, Felipe Massa, Daniel Abt, Antonio Felix da Costa and Lucas di Grassi. They were the 5 people that won fan boost, so they were able to choose when they used that particular button to get a boost of power. And you can imagine that Antonio Felix da Costa knew that he was a winner of the fan boost and managed to use that at the last minute. He activated his fan boost and off he went to get the victory. So there you have it. That is the first race of Formula E. So much happened in that race, as you can tell. I had a lot to cover, but I tried to write everything down so I could bring the best action to you. So now I think we should talk about where we're going to be seeing Formula E next. So that was the first race of 2018, and now all the other races are going to be in 2019. So race number 2 is in Marrakesh on January the 12th. Race number 3 is in Chile on January the 26th. Race number 4 is Mexico on February the 16th. Race 5 is in Hong Kong on March the 10th, and race 6 is in China on March 23rd. Race 7 is in Italy on April the 13th, and race 8 is in France on April the 27th. Race 9 is Monaco on May the 11th, and race 10 is in Germany on May the 25th. Race 11 is Switzerland on June 25th. For the final 2 races, we have a double header. So for race 12 and 13, it will be the USA on July the 13th and July the 14th. So Formula E's season will end when Formula 1 is in the middle of their season at the British Grand Prix. So it's going to be a very exciting time for motorsport. But there you have it. That is my Formula E shakedown. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to talk about anything more Formula E, leave me questions down in the comments below. I'm Georgina, your Formula Fangirl, and thank you for coming. Bye! Bye.